relax your hand and breathe. Still, the most important thing, rather than the picture on the page, is getting your pencil to respond to the changes in angle that you see. And this is something that you can train. The more you practice it, just do a bunch of these with your hand, your shoe, whatever is nearby. Birds are not very cooperative subjects. This is a very powerful practice to explore. Anytime you're just sitting at a bus stop, try a contour or a blind contour or a modified contour drawing of whatever you're seeing around you. The more you practice it, the more you strengthen that thread between your eye and your fingertips. You find that is an invaluable skill. The next approach we're going to take a look at to sketching is what's called a gesture drawing. And that's how I started that other drawing. It's a light, loose drawing, a scribbly drawing, initially with no hard lines. With something like this, I have no commitment to any of the marks that I make. But as I make 20 different lines here, my brain will start to gravitate towards the ones that are in more of a right place. If I have several different lines, so kind of like, no, that's looking too kind of funky out there. No, not that. Yeah, that's sort of in here, sort of in here. And as I kind of get that feeling like, yeah, sort of in here, I'm going to strengthen those lines and push a little bit harder and finally get those ones to pop out. So out of many appears the one that you're going to follow. So this is not drawn like this. The way you don't do it, you don't do a gesture drawing like this. It's not that energy at all. A gesture drawing is more like this. Your hand is moving fast. It's light, it's loose. It's non-committal. I make a lot of light lines. And then out of that, I start to focus down towards the ones that feel more that they're in the right place. Let's just contrast for ourselves these two approaches, sort of the deliberate drawing versus this light gesture thing. What I'm going to ask you to do right now is just take your pencil and on your paper, put your pencil down and with one stroke, clear and confident, draw a perfect circle. Give it a shot. How'd that work out for you? All right, I'll show you mine. It's kind of wobbly, isn't it? All right? And, I guess the more you practice this, the better you can get at it. But there's a similar way. It's the gesture drawing approach. With the gesture drawing, what I do is I start with this kind of going around, and I've got a lopsided circle, but I notice where it sort of needs to be pooched out more, and I add more into that area. And then as I see the lines that sort of really feel right, I'm going to reinforce those more, and I end up with a circle. So if I start off and it's lopsided, I am correcting that, and I need more on the top, all right, and you then kind of get into, yeah, I think that's better, right? Give that a try. Make a gesture drawing of a circle. Don't just keep kind of going around the same track, but really look at what you're getting. Where does that need to pooch out? Where does that need to be trimmed? And then as you do that, watch the circle appear in front of you. How'd that work for you? Like it? So very often I'll start a sketch this way with that gesture drawing, and because I haven't put any details on it, this is where I want to sort of, I've got something that I can compare against reality and say to myself, how are my proportions? This is where I'm starting. I've now got something to sort of test and sort of see how is it the right length versus height, and this is where I will start to sort of put in my my proportions. I want to think of how long is it versus how tall is it? What are the, if I've got the sort of length here from nose to tooth, if that's 1, this is about 3 long, it's about 2 tall. I also can project against, make a line from one kind of clear point, maybe in the back of the skull here to where the teeth come in. If I draw a line or envision a line, I don't even have to draw all these lines all over. If I envision that, I see that, oh, actually the jawbone should come down and lay right against that little line right there. That's interesting, right? I can see from the point of where the nose is here, if I drop that line down, where does that intersect on the bottom? You know, here I see that this bump on the top of the head lines up pretty nicely with this bottom of the jaw down here. But if I'm focusing on drawing the top up here, right, and not projecting where does that connect down below it, it's easy to get my jaw perfectly drawn over here with that bump perfectly drawn over here. So by visualizing these lines through it and around it, it's possible for me to find the problems with my proportions before I add in my details. Yes?
So you're not really drawing it, you're just kind of imagining it?
Sometimes I'll draw lines. Sometimes I'll little drop down lines like that. I'll draw some of those. But very often, I'm just kind of eyeballing it.
So we could do this for practice, and then when we're actually on the field or something, kind of have the skill in it?
And, or actually, well, sometimes when I'm doing my drawings, I'll draw those lines on it. Other times I'm just visualizing it. They're both good. Something that helps with this, can I borrow somebody's pencil? Somebody has a long right here. Your pencil is a great tool for doing this. What I'll do is I will kind of hold my pencil up and say, I'll take my thumb and say, there is, so that shadow on the screen, right? If this is 1, I'm going to go, this is 1 to there, 2 to there. You can use this as a measuring tool. You can also hold your pencil up against what you see and make a diagonal with it and look at where does that intersect different sorts of things. When you're doing this, you ever see artists kind of out doing this sort of a thing? That's what they're up to. And it actually helps when you do this to lock your arm all the way out. Because if you're measuring and each time you do it, you're holding your arm at a different distance, your measuring point is changing. So you lock your arm out, right? And you're good to go. So you're measuring, you're checking your angles. Holding that pencil up also gives you a straight line against which you can notice angles, right? at what angle is this coming out. If I have a straight line that I see next to that, that helps me sort of visualize what those angles are. This is a very useful tool. Let's take a look at this drawing right here, and just take your arm out at arm's length and start measuring around on it and see what size relationships you can observe about this as you start actively measuring this object. What do you notice?
The tallest and widest point is about the same.
I'm sorry?
The square and the widest point are halfway.
So the widest point is about halfway up.
The circles are a quarter of the line length and a quarter of the width.
Oh, this is 1/4 of this distance. Interesting. So, if you were to draw this without initially connecting some of those relationships, it would be very easy to get parts of it that kind of look right, but the overall thing could be wacky. Let's make a drawing of this on your piece of paper. A weird turtle head or something. For part of this, your brain is responding to what you see. For part of it, your brain may be just sort of filling in and making stuff up. And sometimes you get a few marks on the page, and because we're there, we believe them, and we're just going to go with it. But actually having some measurements to kind of keep ourselves on track is going to really help our drawings. The more you measure it, the more you think about these things, the size relationships, the proportions begin to flicker into your head. If we started with this grid on it, would it have been easier to draw?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, figuring out those sorts of size relationships and measuring things can really help you get an accurate drawing of what you're doing. Some people say that, that's too kind of mechanical. I want to be out there expressing myself. It's a really useful tool to kind of get you out of the proportions that are in your head and really pay attention to the proportions that are there in front of you. Give it a try. Just hold your pencil up and look at some of the angles and size relationships on this. What would you use as your measuring tool? How would you sort of measure height versus width? How would you go about exploring this? What angles, what measurements are going to be helpful for you? When you project that point down, what does it connect with? Are there any interesting things that line up? This way, or this way? What happens, where do you end up with if you, put a line diagonally from this to the front of the teeth? How could all those lines help you correct angles on your drawing? This is useful stuff. But often we're just there drawing, and we don't pause to check those angles and to measure. The more that we do that, the more that we will be able to get our drawing to look like whatever object it is that we see in front of us. So that's measuring. A really unused tool, but not nearly as unused as what I think is the mother of all sketching tools, the ultimate, one of the most powerful visualization tools in the artist's toolbox is looking at negative spaces. And by negative spaces, I mean, here's my skull, my upper jaw, my lower jaw. Most people are going to draw this, the upper jaw, then they draw the lower jaw, and by accident, where these two things come together, they get some shape in here. Right? If in your brain you actually look at that space between the upper and the lower as a shape, and you preserve its height, its width, its angles, that's going to draw really important parts of your subject. By the way, I don't shade in all my negative spaces. I've just got them shaded in here to help point out these are some things that I use as negative spaces. Okay? Here's this big eye socket space, right? I've got my my zygomatic arch here, my jawbone. I've got my brow ridge up here. When I'm up here drawing the head, I'm drawing in my brow ridge. When I'm down here drawing this, I'm drawing that. If I'm not really paying attention to the distances between these, I could get something that's really too small. Because I'm just looking at this shape versus this shape. And I'm not looking at what is the shape between those shapes. So, looking at these negative spaces helps keep all these different parts of my drawings proportionate relative to each other. And a negative space does not have to be completely enclosed. It can be, what is the cool shape back here in the corner of the jaw? Or where the lower jaw comes into that. I can look at that as a shape. I can look at that as a shape. I can look at the shape where the nostril is. And sometimes you'll see like, oh yeah, it kind of looks like a eccentric cardinal. Yeah, there's a little beak, it's got a little crest, belly comes down, and it's got a little tail on there, right? So if you can actually look at these as a shape, it will really, really help your game. Let me get rid of all of these marks. What would you see as negative shapes in this skull? What are the negative shapes that you see? That's a nice one, right? If you're just drawing this and drawing that, but not getting that thing, that really jumps out, right? I want that as a shape. What else? Yes?
The shape of the nose, the short triangle shape of nose.
The shape of this in here?
Yeah.
Yeah? You have a shape here. You have a shape there. Yes?
The nose.
We have a shape in here, right? The shape between two shapes. Yes? You?
The one that's kind of like to the right of the eye.
Right. Oh yeah, right back here.
You know, this circle. Here's something that's really outside. The big one.
So it's this shape here,
No.
this one here, this here.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So here, look at this. Look at this as a shape. Don't just draw the jawbone. Look at this space behind that as an actual shape. Other ones you could have this here, right? All of these present themselves as shapes. Look at the angle here. Look at how when you focus on the shape of the red back here, it's easier to see this angle than it is if you focus on the bone. Because you're looking at the less detailed part, you can see that angle more clearly. When you're looking at this part, you're so distracted by these little sutures and lines and dots and things. When you look back here, you're looking at the most simple thing. That's the power of negative shapes. Just really access that and it will turn your drawings on their head. Some parts of a skull also, when I look at them, a geometric structure appears to me. When I was looking at the nose of that porcupine, it really popped out as a very boxy structure. Behind that, there was this sort of square platform. There was a triangular wedge on top of where the teeth came. So if I can also get myself to look at my subject three-dimensionally and say, are there parts of this that are kind of made up of simple geometric shapes, cubes, cones, these sorts of things, spheres. Visualizing those will help me get this thing to be in my head a really three-dimensional object. So I'll sort of try to simplify it to geometric shapes that I can put together. So here's a little wedge next to a cube, next to a little rectangle and a sphere. Here's a little wedge next to a cube by a little rectangle and a sphere back here. So I'm trying to get myself to see the geometric shapes that could three-dimensionally compose what I'm looking at. If I'm drawing everything as a straight profile, maybe I don't need this in mind. But the moment things start to twist and turn a little bit more towards me, this becomes really, really powerful. And it's also going to suggest the way that once I start thinking of this three-dimensionally, I can start thinking about how is that going to affect the way that shadows fall. You can have those shadows with just sort of areas of tone, but if your pencil strokes show up, I like to use what's called contour shading to define the shapes of those objects. By contour shading, what I'm doing is I'm putting lines on these objects in the direction that if I was a raindrop and I landed right here, it would slide down right this way, from the middle of this to the middle of that. A raindrop's not going to slide diagonally across something like that. It's going to go straight down. Which way is straight down on these surfaces? On a round object, I like to think of latitude and longitude lines. If there are lines going around a round thing, they can wrap this way, they can also wrap around this way. I'll use both of these to give a sense of roundness when I'm describing something. On my website, I've got a blog on drawing sort of round chests on birds, another one on drawing rocks, in which we really look at these approaches for sort of carving angles and things. So I want to encourage people to check out those blog posts. It'll kind of go into this contour shading in even more detail. In the previous workshop, we really kind of got into it in more oomph. But I will use these to help me sort of show, with my shading strokes, show something about the shape of what I'm looking at, instead of simply going like that. So there can be a sense of the roundness of a subject in even the pencil strokes of how I am describing something. So let's take a look at that walk through with this porcupine skull one more time. We've now taken a look at this sort of idea of constructing three-dimensional geometric shapes, negative spaces, gesture sketching, measuring, all these different sorts of things. And what I want you to really see here is that these are not separate little exercises. These are all ingredients that you can put together in any drawing and sort of pull on one here, pull on another one there. You don't always have to do them in this order, but for me, I often like to start just with a light gesture sketch to give me some sort of landmark on the paper. And then I've got something to see, how does this really compare with the measurements that I'm seeing? I don't have to draw these lines on, but measuring, stopping, checking my proportions at this stage is really important. If I check, most people check their proportions at the end of the drawing. And then all you can do is go like, yeah, my head is too big. Because you've already drawn in all the eyelashes. And what are you going to do about it? Erase that entire head? I don't think so. Maybe you can stick it into Photoshop and shrink it down, right? But that's about it. But if you catch it at this stage, you go like, oh, back of my skull needs to be a little bit longer. Okay, that's no problem. I'm also going to look at how things line up. Right? Got my pencil out there doing that. And I'm good. Then, I like to think about the negative spaces. Both the ones that are not enclosed and these enclosed ones. That's going to really help me place all these elements. On top of this nose zone was especially boxy. So that really lent itself to me to thinking three-dimensionally. And I'm going to use this sort of constructivist approach to kind of carve in three-dimensionally what is going on with that crazy boxy nose. On top of that, I'm going to use that partial contour approach to drawing my lines. So as I'm drawing in these lines, I'm not just looking at this. Often I'm looking up and then checking down. Right? So I'm checking back at that object. That's going to allow me to catch the nuances of changes in line and get out of my brain's idea of the way it should look and really get into the way that it actually does look. As I'm drawing these lines, you'll see in a moment that there's a lot to kind of how we actually make our marks. I don't have to worry about where it goes, because that's already solved by all this stuff. Now I can just focus on making a beautiful line. I've already solved where it goes. And you'll see that there's actually a lot behind how you make the line itself. We'll get to that in just a moment. It's hard to tell what is dropping in or popping